Hello everybody! Welcome to another in my series of first looks. This time I'm taking a look at Rack and Ruin, the campaign-based fantasy skirmish game. To begin with, you might wonder why is this a printout? Well, I backed this thing on Kickstarter, but I didn't splurge for the hard copy. I don't recall exactly why. Probably shipping costs, that's usually the reason. So I just got it as a PDF, and I've done a printout of it. As it says, this is a miniature game. It's about 175 pages. If you buy it from the creator, it's $20 for the PDF, or $30 for a printed softcover version, or $35, I believe, for both the hard copy and the PDF. That's before shipping. It is, well, let me put it this way. This is an interesting game because it is a kind of hybrid between a miniatures game and an RPG. When they say it's campaign-based, they're not kidding. This is the main difference I've noticed between this game and other skirmish games is that if you want to play Rack and Ruin, you gotta do it as a campaign. There is absolutely no point to doing standalone games because improving your characters from game to game and the whole campaign system is the meat of the game. So just doing one scenario isn't gonna be any fun. The term RPG is never used in the rules, but a lot of typical role-playing terminology occurs, like for instance, your guys are called characters, your collection of miniatures that you field is called a party, and there is a kind of referee called a herald, who sort of acts as a game master. And yeah. And of course, the characters gain experience points and they gain levels, and they have attributes that sound like stats from an RPG. What do we get in this game? Well, it's mostly rules. There's a few pages of setting fluff at the very beginning. I don't quite see why. Well, they're not in the way. I mean, because, as I said, most of this is rules. It has rules for actually playing the scenarios. It has rules for creating and advancing parties, for skills and traits, quite a lot of them, lots and lots of skills and traits you can have, and lots of magic you can use. Again, this is all very RPG-like, and that you can customize your characters extremely much. There are, items you can find, and finally, of course, there's a chapter on scenarios. A lot of the scenarios are built around finding treasure, and in fact finding stuff is really important because when you start a scenario, the limitation on how many characters you can field is if you can feed them, you need to have supply, and supply costs gold, and gold is something you get by searching and terrain and otherwise doing objectives during a scenario. So you need income to keep playing, which is an interesting mechanic. The game itself is the system, the rules system is unexceptional. I mean, it's you roll a 2d6. Each side rolls 2d6 and adds an attack modifier or defense modifier. High roll wins, and then the loser makes a save against the damage. It all seems reasonable and like any other game, it doesn't seem very hard to figure out. Now, let's talk about possible issues, because well, let me put it this way. Anything that I don't complain about is fine. It is kind of unclear in many points. It seems pretty obvious from the wording of many passages that you can actually play games of more than 2 players. They kind of assume that there's more than 2 players at the same time in a scenario. However, there's no upper limit unless you take it as a limit that you can only be 4 parties at the most, because when you roll for setup, you choose sides of the table to enter through. But then again, there's nothing saying you can't have 2 parties entering from the same side, I think. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, they also say that the campaign is really important, but there is actually no information at all about how to actually set up a campaign. They say the herald should design a campaign, but there is nothing in the rules outside the scenarios. There's no connective tissue outside playing scenarios, leveling up, buying stuff, and playing another scenario. You sort of... there is a level of assumed knowledge here. They kind of assume you're an experienced gamer. There's a table I find really unclear, which is kind of important here on page 78, which is when you power up, what you get at the various levels. Level 2 says +2 skill, traits. I assume you get both those things, +2 skill points and a trait. And I assume also that you get 2 points to distribute among skills, not +2 to a skill, because that would... well, if you put that on an existing skill, that would break the rule that you can't have any skill level higher than your character level. But it's not very well worded. And there's also here on page 78 the challenge rule. The thing is, an unlucky player or unskilled player will have a weaker party, and there's a way to measure how strong the characters in your party are. And this says here, challenge ensures that new parties have a chance to win games against a player with a more experienced party, and that's just not true as far as I can see. I can't find any rules assigning more victory points or in any way making victory easier for the party with lower challenge rating. What is there is that if you have the lower challenge rating for your party, you will get more experience. You get an experience bonus. You learn more by fighting against better parties. But, you know, in terms of actual game mechanics, you're always more likely to lose if you're the weaker party, and if you lose, you get fewer resources out of it, and you can't improve as much between games, and yeah, it's a downward spiral. So, I don't know. I would have to playtest this to find out if it actually works. But it's possible this is balanced by the fact that in many scenarios, non-combat objectives give as much or even more victory points than simply killing the other guys. So it's possible that a weaker party could like sneak around the map and try to claim objectives and you know, search for loot and so forth, and try to avoid combat entirely. It kind of depends on how you set up your board. The rules for that are kind of vague as well, by the way. There is nothing about the size of the table at all, or even the size of the terrain pieces. There are rules for placing terrain, but very little about how these terrain pieces should look. So, well, my conclusion, preliminary conclusion, without even having played it yet, of course, that's why this is a first look, not a review, is that this is very interesting. It seems like it might be fun. It might also require a little bit of work, a little bit of house ruling, perhaps. But I mean, if you're a gamer and you've played a lot of other miniatures games before, and you know that you're interested in the sort of experience this is aiming for, you can probably mod it on your own. It's probably not out of your realm of abilities. And, you know, you can give it a try. The cost of entry is a little bit high. I mean, the PDF is not competitively priced, I would say, unfortunately. You could probably get it a little cheaper if you... They have a new Kickstarter running right now, actually, for a supplement to this. And you can... I think you can get the basic rules as an add-on to that as well, possibly at a discount compared to the full price. I'm not sure. But, yeah. That's all I have to say about Rack and Ruin, I think. Interesting, promising, but know what you're getting into and be an experienced gamer before you start on this. Don't try this as your first skirmish miniatures game. So, that's all for me today. Until next video, Dakian is signing off.